Today is August 10, 2026. This research overview is AI-generated and requires human review before publication or decision-making. The collection is partial, although all 35 supplied paper analyses were covered. Our main theme is that more training, more environments, or more stored context does not automatically produce a better system. Compatibility, locally relevant evidence, and evaluation design repeatedly determine whether apparent progress survives closer inspection.
Start with multitask post-training. In one 1.5 billion parameter setup, sequential supervised fine-tuning lowered the four headline scores from 83.1, 34.9, 31.0, and 15.0 to 78.2, 31.1, 9.0, and 14.3. Sequential on-policy reinforcement learning instead reached 86.6, 49.3, 43.0, and 17.3. The authors also measured much smaller and less aligned parameter updates under reinforcement learning. That is, evidence within this setup, not proof that reinforcement learning universally avoids interference, because the supervised and reinforcement learning datasets differed.
A second study reaches a compatible conclusion from multimodal agent environments. Diversity has to be designed, not merely accumulated. With a fixed 256 samples per environment, in-distribution success peaked at 66.3% with 40 environments, then fell to 42.1% with 160. Out-of-distribution success also peaked early and declined. A selection method favoring ability coverage and low gradient conflict, combined with a difficulty curriculum, reported large relative gains. But those results came from virtual environments, model-assisted labels, and apparently single runs without uncertainty estimates.
Together, these papers support an editorial connection. Heterogeneous training benefits depend on compatibility rather than task count alone. A concrete next experiment would hold tasks, samples, and update budgets fixed, while independently varying on-policy sampling and centered advantage normalization. Researchers should then measure gradient overlap, forgetting, and capability retention after merging. That factorial design could distinguish the mechanism from differences in training data. It could also test whether compatibility estimates made before training reliably predict which task combinations will coexist.
Embodied control offers a second pattern. Use expensive video generation knowledge during training, but remove generation from the deployed action path. In autonomous driving evaluation, video co-training raised a planning score from 86.6 to 90.3. and reinforcement learning raised it to 91.5. In a separate robot control task, distilling generator states produced 97.8% success and 134 millisecond action latency versus 493 milliseconds for a comparison system. These numbers are not directly comparable across tasks, and neither study establishes real-world safety.
The important measured result is that training time future video supervision improved compact action policies in both reported settings. The stronger claim, that this is ready for deployment, would be premature. The driving benchmark was non-reactive, used one front camera, and included no real vehicle test. The robot result still required the generator during training, while its intervention evidence was qualitative. A decisive comparison would evaluate action-only, training-only generator and imagine then act policies in the same reactive simulator and physical protocol, tracking success, collisions, interventions, latency, and uncertainty.
Long horizon memory remains much less settled. Addressable video memory slots improved controlled scene revisit consistency from about 0.723 to 0.864 with 16 cache entries. Yet, a modular test time training model, despite competitive aggregate language scores, achieved only 21.07% on exact retrieval at 8,000 tokens, compared with 92.13% for an attention model. Streaming video understanding showed another failure boundary. Historical recall fell to 17.1% when evidence was more than 30 minutes old.
Those experiments use different modalities and metrics, so they do not establish a ranking among memory mechanisms. They do show that bounded state can retain selected information while exact distant recall remains a bottleneck. The streaming results were one run per condition, used a model judge, and mixed architectural differences with backbone and ingestion differences. A useful shared benchmark would place controlled facts in matched text and video streams, then compare addressable slots, fast waits, and hierarchical retrieval at equal memory and compute using external ground truth.
Several evaluation papers warn that aggregate scores and visible outputs can conceal important failures. A learned activation reader became selectively worse at verbalizing the very concept emphasized during its fine-tuning, even though probes still decoded that concept with high accuracy. A privacy audit found every tested agent acquired some out-of-scope sensitive data, with exposure rates ranging from 6.77 to 51.95%. These findings support a shared concern. Information may exist internally or enter context without appearing in the final answer.
A contamination study provides a related statistical warning. On one model and math benchmark, an aggregate probability gap made one mitigation appear better, but a stratified per-question measure reversed the ranking. That directly demonstrates cancellation, hidden by averaging. Still, its method requires a certified clean reference and 50 samples per question. Across these studies, probes show availability, not causal use, and observational correlations do not establish causes. The next step is intervention. Remove or patch the suspected activation or context item and measure changes in both reports and downstream actions.
Human simulation deserves similar restraint. A large persona framework achieved 91.5% adherence for one acting model and 79.2% for another across 400 model-judged trials. A personality change benchmark found only 14 of 27 definite event and trait pairs moved in the expected direction, while behavior correlations were near zero. Small models of human choice nearly matched a reproduced 70 billion parameter comparator within familiar experiments, but transfer to unseen experiments remained more sensitive to scale. Internal consistency is therefore not human behavioral validity.
The practical takeaway is threefold. Design training distributions for compatibility, preserve fine-grained evidence instead of trusting aggregates, and test hidden state as well as visible output. Promising systems results, including faster offline distillation, state-aware agent supervision, and generator-free control, remain tightly scoped by hardware, synthetic data, single runs, model judges, or non-reactive evaluation. No validated historical connection was available, so this episode makes no cross-day influence claim. For the paper-by-paper evidence, caveats, and open questions, follow the linked daily summary.